The first flight taking asylum seekers from the UK to Rwanda will take off tomorrow after an appeals court ruled with the government. But legal challenges to the policy mean that only about 8 people will be on the plane. The government says it's a deterrent, but Prince Charles says it's appalling. Boris Johnson responded to that charge this morning.
Just to clarify, Prince Charles is wrong, Prime Minister.
Let me put it this way, Nick. What I don't think that we should support is continued activity by criminal gangs.
No, I hear that, PM. But the Prince Charles is wrong.
Boats, very frail and very dangerous boats are risking their lives, but also breaking the law.
And the very last thing Boris Johnson would ever do, of course, is break one of his own laws. Well, we'll debate all this in a moment, but I want to start with the story of Hassan Akkad. And not all asylum seekers are like him, but many are. They're a side of this story we simply should not ignore. 11 years ago, he was a 24-year-old English teacher in Damascus in Syria. He wasn't political, but when 15 schoolboys were detained and later tortured for the crime of spraying graffiti, Hassan, like many others, felt enough was enough. Peaceful demonstrations against President Assad's brutality broke out across his home country. So Hassan joined them and took videos of those protests to post online. For that simple act, which millions of us take for granted every day, he was beaten so badly by security forces he almost lost a leg. Months later, after a terrible spell in solitary confinement and facing a lifetime ban from teaching, he fled Syria, which by then was engulfed in a civil war and would soon become one of the deadliest this century. Well, footage Hassan filmed of his perilous 87-day journey to Britain in the hands of people smugglers became the focus of an award-winning documentary. And in the UK, he became a successful filmmaker. But it was more his decision to join the front line of a different kind of war that brought him national acclaim here. He worked as a volunteer cleaner, disinfecting hospital walls fighting COVID at the height of the pandemic. And this message to Boris Johnson persuaded the government to grant indefinite permission to stay in the country for the relatives of foreign health workers who died from COVID.
Us migrants are on the front line doing these very demanding jobs to help this nation overcome this pandemic. And the least you can do, if we die, to give our families indefinite leave to remain.
A powerful contrast to the outcome of the protest that brought him to the UK, and one which might never have happened if he hadn't arrived. Well, Hassan, I'm glad to say, joins me now. Hassan, great to see you again.
Thanks for having me.
This Rwanda proposal of the government, Prince Charles has apparently called it appalling. Today, all the major Church of England leaders have got together, led by the Archbishop of Canterbury and bishops, to condemn it. It's been condemned by many others. On the other side, the government stands by it. Boris Johnson says we've got to stop the illegal people smuggling. And I get some of that argument. So you're in a great position to tell, really, what you think of this proposal. And actually, if that isn't the answer, what is?
Well, I do agree with the Prime Minister on stopping boats from crossing the English Channel. I think the English Channel, it is one of the busiest, shipping lanes in the world. People shouldn't be risking their lives crossing on flimsy dinghies to come and seek asylum in Britain. However, they should be provided, like the Ukrainians, with safe routes, safe passages. People should be, if they're fleeing Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Sudan, Eritrea, any country in the world, they should be given a safe passage to the country. Now, a safe passage into the country for these people doesn't exist. People cannot come here in a regular route. So that's why they are pushed to go on these flimsy boats. Now, is the question that you ask yourself, why are we going to export our responsibility, our moral responsibility, to another country? People who come here are our responsibility, our legal responsibility, and they should be processed and they should be granted asylum here in Britain. The government trying to put them on a plane to send them hasn't happened before. Actually, aside from Israel, no country has tried to export asylum seekers to a different country. The UNHCR said yesterday, they said that this scheme lacks the legality and the appropriateness for moving people from one country to another. So I think, in my opinion, it's inhumane, it's illegal, and it's inappropriate.
When you were in a dinghy yourself, risking your life for freedom, escaping the hell of the war in Syria, put me into that dinghy for a moment. What was it like to be in one of those dinghies, knowing you might actually die?
Well, it's horrible because you feel like you're cargo. You feel like you are, you don't feel human anymore, and you're treated as a number. Did I expect ever in my life, when I grew up in Damascus, that this will ever happen to me? No, because I lived a comfortable life. I lived an incredible life, but you hit rock bottom within a second. You know, it just happens in a blink of an eye. And then, when through the lottery of the world you are born with a passport that you can't get visas anywhere, you can't get on a plane and go to Britain or to America or anywhere in Europe, then you are forced to travel on that boat. It is dehumanizing, it is painful, and it's quite sad. And then imagine having traveled for thousands of miles, risked your life, crossed on a boat, and then came to Britain, expected that you'll be dealt with respect, with dignity, with humanity, and then the government here decides to put you on a plane and send you to Rwanda, to a country that you have no connections with, no community, no friends, no one to look after you. It's my expectations of coming to Britain, before coming to Britain, are not aligning with the reality. This is really damaging the reputation of this country internationally.
The argument that is put by the other side is that something has to be done that's drastic, something has to be done to deter the people smuggling, and that by doing this, if people genuinely believe, if they're in the Calais jungle, for example, where you were, if they genuinely believe there's a chance they may get flown to Rwanda, it will put them off getting in a boat. Do you think that is likely? It's
not going to happen. You know, migration, when did migration ever stop? When did people stop moving? Our world right now, you know, if the government is watching the news, man-made crises and climate change is forcing more and more people to move, to go on the run. It's not going to stop people from moving. What will... you, me, your viewers, everyone wants to see these boats stopping from crossing the channel. But to stop that, we have to have legal and safe routes. It's the government's own finding, by the way, when in 2019, the Home Affairs Select Committee, they did a study of our immigration laws, and they concluded that any policy which focuses primarily on stopping boats from coming will push people to take even more dangerous routes. People will continue to come, but you know what's going to happen, the long-term effect. People will be pushed to the fringes of society. People won't claim asylum. They will go into the black economy. They won't be able to have access to education, to health, and they won't even open bank accounts or get travel documents.
Difficult question, but I want to put it to you anyway. If they were being flown to Canada, for example, not one of the poorest countries in the world like Rwanda, which has a pretty dodgy record of authoritarianism and the rest of it, if it was a country like Canada, would you feel as exercised about it, or would you think it was something worth trying?
I think that it is Britain's responsibility to deal with its asylum seekers, full stop. They're sending them to Canada, to Rwanda, to America, to Malaysia. I don't care where they're sending them. I think it is our responsibility to deal with them. Let alone, imagine me fleeing Bashar al-Assad's regime, an authoritarian regime, and then travelling all this distance and coming here, and then Britain sending me to another authoritarian country.
And the truth is, Boris Johnson and his government wouldn't dare send any Ukrainians to Rwanda.
No.
So what they're basically saying is that that war is a protected war, where we think that they are fully deserving of coming to our country. But if you're from Syria, where war still rages, or the Yemen, or any of these other countries, somehow you're lesser asylum seekers. I find that part of it pretty hard to deal with.
Yes, because it's not a refugee crisis, it's a racism crisis. They're creating a two-tier system. As you said, if you're from Ukraine, if you have a fairer skin, if you have blue eyes, if you're the civilized refugee, we will look after you. We will urge the British public to open the homes for you. But if you're from Afghanistan or Sudan or Syria or any of these countries, no, we're going to put you on the first
floor. Or even countries like Iraq, where we wage
which is our responsibility.
Right.
Yemen, British-made bombs were dropped on Yemen. Afghanistan, our shambolic evacuation from Afghanistan, and Afghanistan falling to the Taliban is our responsibility. And Iraq is our responsibility. So when people flee these countries and come here, the least we can do is to treat them with dignity and respect and look after them.
Hassan, when you were in Calais, and you obviously met a lot of people who were trying to get over, in the end you came by plane because you got hold of a passport, and that's how you did it, a fake passport. But the people that were there that were planning to get on the boats, for example, there is a belief a large number of them are young, male, economic migrants.
Yes.
What was your experience of the people there?
It's true. Most people who are doing these journeys are men. But we shouldn't demonize men. I think men are entitled for protection and they should be looked after. And then we ask ourselves, why do men do these journeys? I'll tell you why. Because it's men who are fleeing military service. It is men who decide to leave their families behind, do these horrible journeys, these life-threatening journeys. Then they can get to their destinations and then apply for family unification and then fly their families. That's why it's mostly men who do it. And then the government's own finding, most people who cross here to Britain are genuine asylum seekers, are genuine refugees. In fact, the people who are being deported to Rwanda, the ones who were served with deportation notices, some of them are torture survivors. These are the people we're deporting to Rwanda. Torture survivors, victims of trafficking, and even unaccompanied minors.
Do you know people who have fled the Syrian war who are being sent to Rwanda?
Yes, I know 2 brothers, and they're being separated. One of them is staying here, and the other being sent to Rwanda. Can you imagine? Just think about that for a second. Think about where's the humanity in that?
There are politicians in this country who seem to specialise in demonising those making the trips on the boats. We've got one here.
Border Force have been overwhelmed this morning. A huge number of boats again today. We even found a vessel a few minutes ago with 13 people in it with no engine. 13 people simply with oars. I mean, this boat hasn't even got an engine. It's probably been stolen. They've got a lovely day. If the weather was to puff up, that'll be the end of that lot. It is not an exaggeration to suggest that if we carry on as we are, it'll be 100,000 people that cross the English Channel this year, and 90,000 of them will be young men without any documents whatsoever. The boats, you can see, are much sturdier than the previous ones we saw in the summer. This is not one of the really big ones, but be assured of one thing. They're going to keep coming throughout the whole of the winter.
I mean, I would have thought having Nigel Farage patrolling those waters might be a big deterrent anyway, actually, without threatening Rwanda. But the point is that he does this constantly, demonising all of those who are risking lives to come over. What's your message to people like Nigel Farage?
I mean, Nigel Farage built his entire career on scapegoating migrants. When I first came to the country, I remember him standing outside these posters of breaking points. He had these massive posters in the lead to the referendum, which is, to me, this is the route that I took. He used people from my country as for his propaganda. What really scares me, basically, not Nigel Farage, I don't care about Nigel Farage. What scares me is when Priti Patel uses that rhetoric, when Priti Patel escapes migrants, the Home Office Secretary. She's using us as pawns in her culture wars. And our politicians, my message to the politicians, do not play politics with people's lives. People don't come here for fun. They're not coming here for... You know, living as an asylum seeker is crushing. At its worst, it's really agonizing. You live in limbo. You live on £5 a day. You are not allowed a job. You can't access education. I have a friend of mine has been waiting for his asylum for 7 years. So there are no pull factors. Britain isn't great, you know, and that's why. I'm sorry, I'm so fired up, but this is too personal to me.
Well, I just remember when you came, and one of the first things you did when the pandemic happened was volunteer to go and work in a hospital on a COVID-19 ward when many health workers were dying, and that to me showed your gratitude to this country for what it had done by taking you in.
I've done that, but you know, people should be dealt with respect and dignity, even without having to risk their lives and volunteering in COVID wards, because it's seeking asylum is our right, is our human rights, and it's enshrined in international law. And Britain now is breaking international law.
Hassan, good to see you.
Thank you
very much indeed.
Thank you.